You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. We're finally going live on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, and Facebook. We were supposed to go live a little bit earlier today. Things just didn't work out, but here we are now at 12:18. Better late than never, right? Today I got on a returning guest, actually. He was on the show probably about 6 months ago. And I got him back today touching on the Tetragrammaton. Today I have Indigo with us. And I do have my wonderful, amazing Canadian co-host on with me as usual. What's going on, Theresa? Do you want to say what's up? Let everybody know who you are and about that amazing podcast you have.
Thank you so much for having me back on. So I have another show called the Spiritual Gangsters podcast, which is a lot of fun. It's cool chats, cool hangouts for awake and aware people, interesting life stories and experiences. So come check it out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, all the major places. And the links will be in the bottom for sure.
Of course, as usual. And just to let people know, too, the links for that show is also in my own link tree since I'm a co-host. So, but I think hers may have more links to other stuff. So definitely check out that.
Yeah,
one.
like my social media and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And I do also want to let people know going forward that, if you're listening, we do have video. And if you're watching, we do have audio. There could be more episodes on audio than video. And I also did want to kind of make a small disclaimer about this topic today. For people who may be, and I'm not saying this word in the negative sense, I'm actually using it in the way it's supposed to be used, people who may be ignorant to occultism and magic, before we start the Tetragrammaton, I do want to let people know that, for some reason there is this misconception that Aleister Crowley seemed to have written every ritual everybody uses. He wrote maybe 3 rituals himself and did Liber Resh. The Tetragrammaton, Enochian magic, the lesser ritual, the pentagram, the hexagram, all that stuff was prior to Crowley ever taking a fucking breath. So, before we get going, this is not, just based on him. He may have added on to things in magic and his own ideas and whatever, but this is not based off of his stuff. Just want to say that going forward. And now, finally, to the guest. Ethan, would you like to introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are and where they can find you?
Peace on earth. I bow to you guys humbly for including me with all your intelligent guests and letting me communicate with you guys. I've been writing for a while, articles and books and so forth, and that's a great place to start. Actually, where you began. Is noting the taboo nature of this topic. Mm-hmm. And another taboo word and subject matter related to what I want to talk about, or beginning anyway, related to the word anyway, is the pentagram. Right? The pentagram has a big taboo, like, whoa, you say that word and you're automatically skewed, but it's just a 5-pointed star, of course. Yes. And of course in Chinese traditional medicine, or traditional Chinese medicine, the pentagram, the 5 points, are a way to interpret the properties of herbs and the problems of bodies and find healing modalities with contrasting these this elemental flow of the five elements of healing. And the inversion of the pentagram, well, that might be the opposite of what is the 5-pointed star. It's and the natural system that is TCM, for example. So the inversion of systems tend to be the reason why whole systems have this backdrop as taboo. But pentagram is very similar to the word tetragrammaton, right? And so pentagram literally just means 5-pointed system or shape. And so tetragram would mean the same thing, but 4. And so, but tetragrammaton is the actual word. And that, if we look at that in the etymology, it's sort of related to how we in English say the very similar shun, a shun, situation, or what have you. And so grammar is actually the word that is most related to the idea of grammaton or grammation, and count and grammar, or words, numbers and words come together in that word, right? We measure things in grams, right?
Yeah.
And we codify things with words with grammar.
That's the
And
weight
it
of
is
the
all-
energy.
Sorry?
Maybe it's just the weight of the energy. Grams.
That and yeah, the correspondence is exactly in that etymological origination, right? That measure and word have that same weight and energy. So tetragrammaton most accurately means 4 grammar, and that actually might seem inconsequential if you haven't looked into other systems that have what could be codified as 4 grammar, most simply. And tetragrammaton was, if we can imagine how taboo pentagram is today, tetragrammaton was much more taboo hundreds and thousands of years ago. You could get hurt or worse for saying the word. In fact, it was not to be uttered in public in some spheres. And on many texts, it is denoted with 4 dots, not even written out, and it was not to be said. It was not to be said in public, and hence we have now other words for it, like Lord, and so on and so forth. So the significance of 4 grammar, I think, is most accurately, or beginning in a sense, related to the Yod He Hav orientation of the Hebrew word for God that the Greeks named the Tetragrammaton. In the correspondence of these letters and the ideas behind these letters, because I think every system has this element, of course, but it's said so with the Hebrew language that there's the exoteric definition and the esoteric, energetic relationship of each of these words and each of these letters.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up with the esoteric and the exoteric, is because, you know, and again, I know I've kind of, I guess, said this in different ways, and I'm not saying it to like even try to sound like cocky or an asshole. It's just people are taking the exoteric and taking it for the esoteric.
Well,
you're taking the most mundane. People are taking the most mundane meanings behind stuff, and considering that the all depth and encompassing meaning, where it's like you're really just pushing knowledge of like still not knowing. Like, I hate to say it, like, you know. So I think that's a big thing. And
applying what is knowledge is applicable in many different ways. It's arguable, but applying knowledge to material situations and progression, that's not what esoteric is, right? Esoteric is not really oriented like that. But every tradition has the indoor and outdoor school, and every system also has an indoor and outdoor meaning, right, as well. So people misapply knowledge, and so therefore it's not wisdom. Right? When you apply it to base activities, it's not really being utilized for its essence, the esoteric. But one of the beginning correspondences of the Hebrew word for God, that's the Greek name of the Tetragrammaton, or what most accurately is etymologically defined as four grammar, is the four dimensions of geometry. and this is, of course, the point, line, plane, and solid. And a plane is most refined in its presentation as a circle. And a volume is most refined in a globe, or you could say a volume and a solid have the same elements in a balloon and a planet, right? They both end up being circular, global, excuse me. So you can see if you look at the Hebrew words, you can see just in visualization of the point, line, plane, and solid. And this, of course, in geometry theory is the basis for all creation, the basis for all measurement. You can't have a line without points. You can't have a plane without lines, and you can't have a volume without planes, right? So each one is dependent on the prior. So your most basic presentation of this four grammar is, not that it is basic, but your most beginning fundamental correspondence, that is the four dimensions of sacred geometry.
You know what I found interesting with the drawings that you sent me in that PDF? That really much reminded me of the Vesica Pisces before it's like put together. And even
right.
that line, I have been wondering, like, with Vesica Pisces, so as it sounds, and I think Theresa might have mentioned it once to me too. You know, if you start looking at the owl too, and the beak, you could start to see the Vesica Pisces actually. So
right.
I do wonder, like, even in that symbol that you had in the book, the two circles and the line, is that all? I really do think that all has something to do with each other. To tell you the truth. When it comes to geometry,
I agree that as I've begun to understand the four dimensions of geometry in the esoteric lesson, and even the exoteric lesson of this four dimensions of geometry, it sounds esoteric, right? That a point can denote the measurement of something the size of the sun, or a place of no space. And a line measures a point between A and B that has no width and no breadth, right? That you can't measure that way, and so on and so forth. So this sacred geometry lesson, even in its very beginning concept, is elusive and esoteric, even in its measuring space of no space a lot of times.
I was even thinking, like, because this goes back to like Hebrew and stuff like that. You had mentioned, I think you were kind of mentioning before about like, I don't know how to actually really say this. I think, if I remember correctly, the Torah, or there is something to do, or maybe it's the Old Testament, I can't remember. There's something, though, with Hebrew, with the Jews, the first letter, and it starts off with, is the 17th letter of their alphabet, which is Peh, which has to do with the mouth and the teeth and the tongue and speech. So it's almost like even their book starts off with the letter of, of actually saying, like, first there was sound or light. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Absolutely.
almost like, to me, it's almost even showing you that's represented in word, in sound.
And this, I believe it's hey, literally represents breath, and all of the Tetragrammaton put together represents in one layer the breath of becoming, and that out of the mouth comes creation.
Sorry, No, sorry to interrupt you guys, because in the New Testament, it's interesting. In the Gospel of John, the very first verse is, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So
Right.
again, words.
And then if you look at the asterisks of some Bibles have it directly. What is God? Tetragrammaton. Or vice versa. What is, excuse me, no, when there's tetragrammaton in the Bible, you look it up and then it says God, right? So God being this energetic creation that is in correspondence with the sacred geometry idea of creation coming into being and measuring creation. And sacred geometry is a way to comprehend and measure the tangible, but also the intangible. And that's why one reason why Thoth Tahuti is the sacred geometry, because he is the God that crosses dimensions, right? He is the one that can go from the tangible to the intangible, the realm of gods and the realm of living and the realm of dead, X, Y, and Z. So
that's why I even do think, like, on the Kabbalah, like with the area where Tahuti falls, I really do think that is like on the tree of life. That's actually either you're going to go down into form or you're going to go back up into spirit.
Interesting.
Yeah, like even the spot where he's at, it's almost as if like this is why I do think he's kind of sometimes known as a jokester or a troll or, a trickster, is because he understands both sides and actually just kind of makes fun of or laughs at what people think is important in this world, knowing the other side, and just like, fucking really? I don't know. It's just like, I think that's where like the whole joking around, almost cockiness because of like understanding both sides and just being like, really? You're fucking acting like this when there's this, I mean, yeah.
And he's and he's in charge of initiation and ascension and individuation and wisdom teachings. And so guess what happens when you show up at the door of the mystery school or the Shaolin temple? I'm sorry, we're full. We don't want any. You see this allegorically represented in Fight Club. The guy comes, they're like, no, we don't want you. You're weak sauce, right? How long has he been out there now? 3 days, 4 days. It's raining. We want this guy. Get him in. And so the first thing you got to go through is the jokester telling you ain't got it, bro. Neo goes through it in the Matrix. You ain't the one. You're neat and all, but
that's why I even think when you get higher to the tree, the whole jester look comes in, and that still is a little bit of a play off of Toth on a lower arc.
And I was gonna say the Joker or this archetype that he in part represents surely is to instigate the mortal that are stuck in the dreadful to do something.
That's why I post fucking trigger shit sometimes. Maybe you'll get so fucking pissed off you'll actually realize you're fucking retarded.
Yeah, right. And
sometimes you need that anger of something to actually get you to think like, you know what, maybe the whatever.
Thoth is meant to be that initiator at the gate, and he's saying, I built the pyramid, and I used to hang out with people that built the pyramids, and you really ain't all that. Well, I'll show you that I'm dedicated. Or if you turn around and are humbled and give up because of the jokester, then he goes, yeah, I was right. But if you wait outside the Shaolin temple and they go, he's still waiting, well, I mean, this is showing some serious patience and dedication. We want you now. Now we want you, right? So the jokester is meant to instigate individuation, or internal initiation, if you will.
This is really a really perfect example, and it's something I've even joked about recently. Toth, I would see laughing at people being, Like, you motherfuckers are so worried about who the fuck John Fetterman is that you don't even know who the fuck you are. And that's why you're always going to be fucking eating their fucking shit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
that goes-
People are
that
spending
corresponds-
hours worrying about if that's a fucking clone or not, and they don't even know who the fuck they even are in their own mind.
Exactly. That corresponds with what you mentioned earlier, using knowledge for external means, even in a base way, more or worse. The knowledge is meant for internal initiation, internal means, right? And so the 4 dimensions of geometry in their most basic exoteric lessons are utilized to measure physical reality. But just like Thoth, sacred geometry transverses this dimensional limitation. There are 4 dimensions, or rather 4 types in one of the most commonly used divination tools on the planet.
You know what I was thinking,
And
too?
that-
Do you think that maybe symbolism and, like, in writing maybe is a little bit more, like, I was thinking you're not actually using your mouth to communicate. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Like, I think that's actually something to do with, like, symbols and even writing, like communicating with just sight and not sound. I do actually think there's something deep to that.
Absolutely. And I think that that idea corresponds with the limitations of presenting a 3-dimensional idea or object on a 2-dimensional format.
Or could that even be letting go of a handcuff and being like, I don't have to communicate with my mouth now. I am not dependent on speech to live in
Well,
this
when you
world.
write,
To live in this
your
world.
message can last. Your message can last. You don't have to be present. Like, someone can come along and read it like 100 years later, 1,000 years later, right? You don't have to physically like be present with them.
Yeah, I mean, what is the expression? A picture is worth 1,000 words. I like to add
Very
on to
good,
that.
Ethan.
A word is worth 1,000 pictures, right? So both of these things have elements of, you can really spark all kinds of things. And having shared a lot of writing, sometimes I share writing and they're like, oh, well, I know you were talking about X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, I see how you say that. That was not on my mind. So
Yeah, like, it really wasn't my intention.
yeah. So I mean, sometimes people read into things in a perfectly valid and even great expansion of an idea because of their ability to find the picture in the words or the words in the picture. The tarot has the 4 dimensions of geometry in the cards. The swords are symbolic for the point. The wands are symbolic for the line. The coins are symbolic for the planes. And the cup is, of course, the volume. So another dimension when one is using the tarot is seeing that sacred geometry dimension of intuition and divination, if you will, but as a tool to measure the non-physical most specifically.
Yeah, almost like a way of it, like, again, like measuring energy.
Yeah.
Physical. I was even thinking with like the geometry and stuff, like, it was hard to explain. I don't know. I'm really thinking about the whole thing of, like, not talking and being able to write stuff. I do think there's something behind that.
Yeah, well, and also to build on what you're saying.
What I was thinking before. I'm sorry, before I forget, because I'll forget again, because I have a buzz now. I was saying it in the chat before. I don't think we even really understand. Like, I think Stein was mentioning semantics, how important that is, and I really do think, like, maybe we are speaking the language correctly. I don't know, but I do think there is a knowing of the language to other people in a different way. I would not be surprised if we do not speak and understand our language is the correct way at all. And if you just use symbolism, you bypass all that as well.
I think it is very possible to communicate an idea for a longer period of time with many more people by way of symbolism, and maybe even more so by way of numbers, right? And mathematics and geometry. These things actually are very much, as I'm interpreting sacred geometry, that's admittedly so. But mathematics and geometry itself, these are not necessarily interpretable items, right? And so, sacred geometry and gematria, maybe there is a lot to it in communicating ideas. And even to build on that, as I was going to mention a minute ago, imagine communicating these ideas among a large number of people who actually are illiterate. You would be much better off using numbers, using letters, using symbols to represent a whole series of ideas.
You know what the great thing about that too is that, like, exactly what you're saying. If somebody's illiterate, you could go and make a symbol that's like 2 pages long, if you were to try to speak what that meant. And
Absolutely.
for somebody who doesn't know how to read all that, can now describe that in a drawing.
Yep. And the same is so with a number, right? 4, for instance, but 3 also. Any number of ways to conceptualize things. And so in that chapter, I briefly, in the Tetragrammaton chapter of the fourth initiation, I briefly touch on the Sumerian king's list by way of Enki's number, which is 40, which is the Tetragrammaton, because 4 and 10. Let me go back. The sacred geometry reference of the Tetragrammaton begins with the relationship of the Yod He Vav He correspondence of the 4 symbols for gram, word for God, but expands on that as well. I forgot my frame of reference. Sorry, what was I mentioning right before that?
Well, you mentioned Enki being 40.
Right. Thank you. Enki has the symbology of 40, and if you look at the number of points that would be involved in depicting the point, line, and plane symbolism, you have 1 point for the point, of course, and 2 points are the minimal number of points for a line. 3 points are the minimal number for a plane, which would be a triangle, and 4 points are the minimum number for a solid. 4, 3, 2, 1 adds up to 10. And there's, by extent, I think they multiplied the 4 and 10, and that's how Enki got the 40.
That's interesting.
By
Now,
symbolism.
he was associated with water, right?
He's associated with water, yes.
Even
and he was a writer and wisdom teacher as well.
Yeah, because even like the 4th sphere would be like, my opinion, like that would be really when you kind of come into some sort of structure and not so much of a thought anymore into this reality. And like it's blue, and I know he's been associated with like aquatic stuff too, like a fish, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I just find that really interesting because that would be like a water sign too.
Yep. And so 40, when you apply Enki's number 40, which relates to the Tetragrammaton, is not necessarily derived from, I don't mean to say, when you apply 40 to the Sumerian king's list, dividing 40 into these numbers, you get some interesting numbers. Some of them are one is 900, another are referencing cycles, degrees in circles, right? So just interesting. And so it goes to what you're saying. I don't mean to say I know what these numbers are trying to communicate, but I think they're trying to communicate something, and I don't know what it is, you know. But when that equation comes up into a number of signification, in this case, say 360s, there's something going on.
You know, something
interesting too. Like,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you.
No, just a little observation quickly. Like, music, like the most common like musical signature is like 4/4, and like often when you count like beats, like in fitness or like if you're just gonna like join along in the song, you're like 4, like usually in 4/8. I just find that interesting.
And poetry,
universal language.
Poetry tends to operate by quatrains.
Well, again, we've been seeing 4 and 8s constantly still.
Well,
everything
4
multiples
and 8,
of 4.
We could say more often than not, 4 and 8 are actually intertwined and often representing the same thing. For instance, one of the most basic elemental representatives of energy and or God is the Ogdoad of the 8 meters of Egypt. And these are 8 gods, but they're actually 4 pairs, one could interpret. So
see, like 4 and 8 even connect in Kabbalah too. 8 is just a lower arc of 4. It's so weird how that you keep seeing that stuff.
And if we look at the Taiji, or what we call in English the yin yang, the same thing. 4 and 8, same thing. In their relationship of being expanding one off of the other. Most often the yin yang symbol, the Taiji, which means literally the grand ultimate. And so what the Taiji symbol is trying to depict on a flat surface, and trying to depict a 3-dimensional object on a flat surface, and trying to depict this grand ultimate energy that is precedent to all. It's the Tao. This Taiji or yin yang symbol is trying to represent the grand ultimate causation, God, the Tao, X via all, XYZ. And so it's not perfect. You can't represent that perfectly, just the same way as actually the Word of God, the Tetragrammaton, is trying to represent God. But it can't really do it that well, but it's the best they could come up with, is the 4 relationship. So the yin yang, excuse my long explanation, the yin yang is actually made up of 4 components. The major yin and yang, which is what we mostly conceptualize, the big swirls, and within each of these swirls is minor and major, minor yin and yang, right? So there's these 4 energies in mutual interdependence being presented in that Tetragrammaton. That's another 4 grammar, a way to perceive reality internally and externally, the yin yang minor and major concept.
You know, something I did want to ask you about with the Tetragrammaton, and you know, I'm sure you've come across it, and just wanted to get your take on it, because I reference back to it a lot, with it being like a magical formula, and even like kind of like I guess base tarot off of it a little bit, would be like the whole king, queen, prince, and princess. I'm assuming you've come across that with the Tetragrammaton, the Yod Hey Vod Hey.
Yeah, I didn't, I don't know exactly the relationship of that. Okay. I understand that is I think a rite of initiation, actually, right?
Yeah, in my opinion.
Or a series of initiation rites.
Yeah, it's like climbing up the ladder, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, no, I just wondered if you had, any takes on.
Yeah, I don't know specifically beyond that more as much as just the symbolism generally.
Gotcha.
The Freemasons are, of course, most often noted as having the three primary initiation factors as well, right? But there's what's beyond that, right? So one of the symbolism or series of symbolism in the Bible and other religions is the 3-day cessation that has to do with astrological significance, of course, and then the rebirth. And so the fourth aspect in that respect is the rebirth or reinvigoration, the spring, as we are in right now.
Gotcha. Another thing I saw in your stuff, and I thought that was interesting, maybe a cover. I mean, you did kind of like mention it a little bit already, but like even like the God names and all that stuff that went along with the Tetragrammaton. I saw like you were kind of like covering different names for God. And I thought that was
right. Well, I mentioned a series of different biblical names that all reference. If you, as I mentioned, if you look it up, in fact, they're all in reference to Tetragrammaton. And what was, wildly more taboo of a thing to even mention, let alone a topic of discussion. And so why was it unmentionable and not available to the average? Well, we can deduce by looking at history in general and present day history that it was information that was restricted because it was related to the development of the individual, and you don't want them talk about water. You don't want them having that water. have a drink of knowledge for wisdom. That was a restricted thing, whether it was just exoteric or esoteric. Beyond that, restriction of information was commonplace. And what's the ultimate information? Expansion on consciousness, right? And another 4 grammar of the oldest symbol on the planet that's so old we don't really have the language originally doesn't have a word for it. It just has a symbol, and it is, as you struck on before, it sort of denotes God, but it again denotes the God before God in a way. The original enunciation that brought everything into existence, just like the Tetragrammaton, is the Om symbol. And the Om symbol is most commonly understood as a trinity, A-U-M. In its symbolism as well, it is a tetragrammaton, but it's most in its vocalization. It's most often known as a trinity, A-U-M. But there's what is counted and not heard is silence.
I was gonna say, do you think like the AUM is like as written, and then the sound is the fourth would be like the energy created representing that image?
I think just like the Taiji symbol and just like the Tetragrammaton, the Om was the best way for them to conceptualize symbolically, visually, and auditorily their understanding of God or the Tao or Om. This beyond this causation.
Something I did want to say that you were mentioning before, even with fucking Jonah, man, this guy fucking commenting in the chats, you know.
No, I can't see.
No, yeah, because we went on Sean Atwood's show. I'm a fucking fed now. This is fucking retard.
No.
Yeah. And that's why I'm having a bad connection. What was I gonna say? Abundance and expansion all goes with the fourth sphere chesed as well, the blue sphere again. Going back to that
Yes.
4,
Beautiful.
to me, that's like the buildup of power going to siphon into the supernal triad, or the expansion of power coming back out of that siphon, coming back into this world. It's really an abundance in both ends, if you think about it. So
That's beautiful.
yeah, so I could see how, like, again, going on with, like, we were, because me and Theresa were covering the chakras. And I think me and her were talking one day prior to recording something. We were talking about the last chakra. And I was going on about, like, stuff in, like, the book that I was using, how, like, later on in the chakras, you don't go from, like, the normal element anymore. You go to, like, sound, thought, and light. And, like, 3, I could see being the idea. The third sphere in the tree of life would be, like, the idea and the thought. And then I could see 4 being like the sound or the structure now coming out, so I could still see it all matching, like what you were saying with the Tetragrammaton. It's actually really just the weighing of that energy. Really, that's all it is a way, I think, of giving abundance to energy. I don't know how to say it properly.
There's a lot of different ways to conceptualize that, but in the unknown, or as I just related, in the Om, the AUM, and then the silence, right? The silence and the unknown and the shadow, and whatever you're afraid of conquering that's holding you back from changing the pattern, that is where the abundance is. That is absolutely where the progression comes forth, right? So in all of that is the correspondence. So the Om represents what Aristotle called the unmoved mover, right? It's this what we can conceptualize as God, because that idea had a big influence on the biblical God, from what I understand. And this is this corresponds with what the Tao and what Om is putting forth in their philosophy. And so the Om symbol is AUM in its articulation, and silence, of course, which is also the inhale, right? There has to be a silence on the inhale. It in its symbolism or philosophy, there is 4 states of consciousness depicted, and that is wake state and sleep state being the first polarity, and there's deep awakening and deep dreaming. And if one can conceptualize the Om symbol, there is a point behind the veil, and that is the point. What is the point of life? Well, there it is, to go across the sea of Mara, or cross the veil, and to find higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And
something I wanted to say.
Actually, Buddha, real quick, back to the 3, overcoming the 3 to get to the 4th. Buddha had to deal with the 3 daughters of Mara right before his final ascension to where he reached Buddhihood or Bodhihood. Please.
You're like talking about, like, the breath of God and, like, crossing the abyss and all that stuff. I have, like, wondered, and it may sound like a little out there, and it's not like I'm not promoting to do it either, but I have said before, I do think a lot of magic and people, NDEs seem to have a lot of similarities, I think. I have often thought, like, is the breath of God in this world the exhale? And is the breath of God in the other world? Like, a lot of times, if you think about it, when you go to hold your breath, you normally take a breath in. If you were to hold that shit until you pass out and choke, you might have some sort of a magical experience.
Well,
I mean, I'm not trying to promote that stuff.
No,
I mean,
no.
just put it this way: when that guy from InXS was hanging from the rope, supposedly jerking off, I mean, it may not have been what everybody thought it was.
Oh, right. There's that too.
That's what I'm getting at.
There, asphyxiation or hyperventilation does cause chemical change within the system. And so simple, I wouldn't go so far as that kind of breath restriction, but simple meditative breath practices can absolutely change your chemical status.
I know for sure. That's
Absolutely.
the only experience
and-
I have. But when you look at other things that you see these like weird
No, I know,
famous
it's
people
a
do,
great-
you could start being like, that seems like a shortcut to something else I've done before in meditation.
Right. Well, and it goes back to what you said before. They're utilizing knowledge for base activity in an externalized material, in that case, sexual pursuit, right? That's not what the knowledge is for. It's an esoteric, internal pursuit, right? And the Tibetan Buddhists talk about making love to the goddess internally. Right? And so there is an internal fashion to find ecstasy. All these different practices note, right? There is an internal pursuit for that. But the Sufis have various breathing practices that resemble hyperventilation and get accused of being simply that. But what is behind the tarot or the I Ching or whatever that makes it work? It's the consciousness. So what is behind breathing practices? Connection with the consciousness, expansion of consciousness. That's where the real power is. It's not necessarily in the cards. It's through the practitioner and the comprehension and so on.
Yeah, so funny enough, there's a really common like pranayama practice called box breathing. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. So like you inhale for 4 breaths, you hold at the top for 4, you exhale for 4, and you hold at the bottom of the exhale for 4. So again, we're making that like tetra structure, with your breath, and that's supposed to like calm your nervous system, help ease anxiety, blah blah blah, refocus, all that stuff.
Beautiful.
You think this 4 stuff goes back to the
reminds
cube?
me. Sorry.
Do you think
what were you gonna say?
Do you think all these 4s all go back to like making the cube as well, the square?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's possible, but the cube is 6-sided, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
that finds in what you're saying is the same relationship as the circle and the globe, right?
Okay, but wait, you have a 4-sided object in the 3rd dimension makes 6 face.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's funny, like all the numbers that like make the one object, right?
A beautiful way.
That's how you get gematria.
One of the great ways to enhance consciousness is to find alignment with things that one has understood as representative of higher consciousness. Some people will meditate on the word of God, the Tetragrammaton, literally. Some people can meditate with the Tao, the Tai Chi. But just in looking at the Tai Chi symbol really quick, a way to really find signification in this symbol and utilize it for a meditation tool that really builds connection. The symbological flow of the Tai Chi symbol or yin yang symbol demonstrates the 4 seasons, right? The expansion of the sunshine is what we're coming into now, and then it starts to eclipse, and the expansion of winter happens, and in fullness eclipses again. This also depicts the cycle of breath. All breath is made up of 4 parts, no matter how you breathe. All breath is based on the major and minor, the major yin and minor yin is going to be the exhalation and the inhalation, right? But no matter how fast or what the particular is, there's a pause. Pause full and pause empty can be equated to the minor yin and minor yang. So every breath, even if we're not meditating, and no matter the meditation itself is based on these four aspects. And so finding, oh wow, so my breath corresponds with the seasons. Yeah, it does. And one meditation aside from that is to just enhance the time periods being in the pause, because our body, our reptilian mind, or our fight or flight, stressed out off the daily monkey mind, whatever, we want to, I need food, I need breath, our animalistic primal needs are inclining immediate breath. And if we can just slow down and be in that pause a little bit longer, it allows the body to go, really, Ethan? It's all okay? Yeah, it's all okay. And you don't need to be there so long in the pause that you stress yourself out, but just elongate it and notice, count what it is anyway, and whether you elongate it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. 4 parts.
Yeah, and I think many aspects of 4 that are as simple and profound as that are often unnoticed because there's so many. It's almost like we're swimming in the air, so we don't notice the air. The 4 is like the element we're in 4, and the 4, is it the 4 elements? Is it the 4 directions? Is it the 4 winds? Is the 4 dimensions? This is just, it's everywhere. It is the basis of so many things that it's everywhere. It's not the only way to perceive reality, but it's a great way to form a basis of perceiving reality, and also internalizing initiation when you use these lessons esoterically, internally.
Very well
I love it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think more about like 4 stuff when it comes to magic, and I'm getting all like, I don't even know where to start. Damn.
Well, what you were saying,
please.
no, what I was saying earlier about when we were talking about the chakras, and then, like light and sound coming is like what starts, but then you almost need like that 4th like receiver. It's like the question of like, if a tree falls, the forest doesn't make a sound if there's nobody there to hear it. Like maybe our like body is kind of like the what am I trying to say? Like the structure that internalizes it. Like if you vibrate your vocal cords, but you don't have a voice box, how can you like make sound? How can you make words? Like it's just always going back to like 4s and boxes.
Yeah. You remind me of a great Chinese expression: hear with your eyes and see with your ears. And also the whole theory of the 4 worlds of the Kabbalah is that creation begins from a layer of reality that takes up no space, that is beyond our space, that is kind of, we can't even perceive what it is or where it is. It's beyond our temporal mortal understanding of everything. And so from that nothingness, it starts to transverse into our reality. And what we perceive as the most material is actually the most immaterial and less consequential. The in the 4 worlds concept, the dimension of the creation is non-material, but yet is the realist. So even that system has a sacred geometry correspondence in it.
Like going back to something I said before, and I guess like you're even saying it yourself, Ethan. You're going back again to like energy and I guess just measurements. There's a book that I have, I think mentioned before. It's like some Kabbalistic book by Jordan Knight, maybe. I forgot the exact name or whatever. I think it's him that like mentions it in his book, and I was like, wow, that's like a really great way to think of it. From going again from the third sphere to the fourth, like you're trying, like kind of again, like how you said, like, or I said, the third sphere is a lot of, in my opinion, thoughts. And then the fourth sphere, he equates it to, it's funny how he says a blueprint, because again, the sphere is blue itself. You know, so I even find that interesting. Is that where we got blueprint even from? He would say it would be like the blueprint is when you're going to start having the idea and start drawing, you know, what the structure is going to look like. And if you think about it, that's all measurements. To make a blueprint, that all that is measurements and material.
Beautiful.
Again, you're measuring the energy now. That's what I really think that whole fourth thing is just the dimensional energy.
Absolutely.
Of that stuff for sound.
And just as geometry in itself is a great way to perceive physicality, and actually all of mathematics is based on arithmetic for operations, and we utilize this knowledge for all sorts of stuff. I can't even comprehend the things that people use mathematics for, and it's all based on, of course, the four operations. Same thing with the sacred geometry understandings is that, yeah, we can conceptualize points, lines, planes, and solids, but how can this be utilized to conceive subtle energy, right? Well, and the geometry rule, again, has this esoteric verbalization. A line can be used as a matter of division or connection. Just like these great initiators and pranksters, jokester gods, they can be used as a manner of connection or separation. And we can see this on maps, right? A line depicts a border, a line depicts a wall, or it depicts a bridge. And we can imagine this. Tai Chi practice meditations have this connection with the earth through your dragon's tail, and connect through the North Star through your temple with a line, like you're a puppet. But it's about this energetic connection, of course, right? And getting your posture right at its most basic. But we imagine linear connections that are energetic in several different types of meditations. And so we can also imagine severing connection with negativity via this construct too, right? Some meditations say, imagine a fence around you that's not too tall, but just tall enough to where people have to ask your permission to get over it, right? This is kind of setting up a peripheral line around you. There are all kinds of ways to look at this concept. But, energetically, I think a lot of people might be hindered or down if they are surrounded by lines, like they're in prison, bars, right? This really weighs down on people and metaphorically traps us, right? Whether it's literal bars or otherwise.
So just how he was saying about like the posture, like meditation, like thinking of your crown connected to like the North Star, and then your tail connected to like the earth.
Oh, again, that's probably like the ground, right? That would be like the ground in a sense.
Well, grounding and then like
your tail going into the ground.
Making like your vagus nerve and like your the line in the body,
absolutely,
the main channel where your chakras intersect. If it's straight, and it's more likely to be open. If you're like even physically like twisted, like if you have bad posture, your channels are not as open, right? To receive divine inspiration.
I would go further than that in Tai Chi, or rather traditional Chinese medicine more specifically, but Tai Chi practice as well. We ask, which came first, holding yourself like you're depressed or being depressed? Which came first. And we could, this posturing is something that we notice immediately if our bro or our relation, however, is a little bit down. We notice it immediately. Are we psychic? Well, I mean, it's like you can't hide it. When you're down, you just slump and you literally depress.
Oh, you can just see it on people's.
Depressed. It's true.
Oh man.
And actually,
It's true.
the basic meaning of chi that's so often associated with development of energy is compressed air. And when you practice and develop your chi, whether it's just in the gym or going for a walk or a meditative walk, which is Tai Chi, you are practicing getting your energy correctly in a compressed air manner. And we are essentially machines that need electricity, magnetism, fluid, and we got an air compressor too, so.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh, what it was
developing chi really helps to, in this subtle manner. I don't know why Tai Chi makes me feel good or why that helps, but it literally is coalescing the air together so that we have a little bit of non-depression, the opposite of depression, compression.
Well, I even agree that there's energy.
Oh, yeah, the expansion.
I mean, that's even just dealing with energy, too, just dealing with breath. So.
Absolutely. And, in my experience with putting out intuitive energy, because it's one dimension is to experience it coming in, right? Like a funnel, right? Well, that's not actually that hard. We're actually, you can't turn that off. You have a funnel that's a receiver, right? But to make that a projector, it requires your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual dimensions to be all right. Not too much, not too little, nice and balanced. If they're not, for instance, if you want something too much, it's like you're always grasping for it and it's always trying to get it away from you, right? So you have to have a balanced approach. And I think just conceptualizing the sacred geometry and what it's valuable for in these other longstanding traditions is a real powerful visualization practice to embodying that further.
Very well said,
that willpower to proceed.
Very well said. Something I did want to just bring up. Oh, go ahead, Theresa. Sorry.
Oh, I was laughing to myself because I know, Crowley always said, bless the results. When Ethan was just saying, if you want something, you can't want it so much that you snuff it out. That energy of desperation, it never works well with anything in life.
That's even that even, and then I'll go into what I wanted to say with the tarot card, but that even reminds me of I mean, I know this might be a controversial opinion, but if I'm going to set up my altar and make a candle and a sigil to ask for fucking $20 or to I don't know, do something to somebody. It's am I lusting something already in that sense? And I'm already fucked that way to begin with. Because I'm already lusting something outside of myself. I'm already lusting a materialism inside this world. I'm not going inward, am I? I'm still lusting this shit. Somehow. And then all it does is just reinforce greed and hate and fear as you're doing these rituals and these, making your little things, whatever. But what I wanted to get to, with the tarot card is that I have even thought of the hermit. Again, he's holding a lamp, and that lamp has again, I've said, if you go look at most cards, it's normally a sphere or some kind of almost like a gem or a diamond looking thing. It is normally never a flame.
Mm.
It's always something like in a shape or normally a sphere. That also goes in the same area that chesed would be in, or connecting to there. And if you really think about it, all it is a glowing orb. The hermit's holding it. Basically, it's just a glowing orb with a cage around it and a triangle on the top. Again, is it just the energy within the blueprint, that he's holding up? And I think that actually represents down farther on the tree, to Mercury. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is something I even said that I thought with the Sam Smith performance. I thought it was showing the downfall of the tree. And I think that Kim Petra was actually the representation of the lamp that the hermit was holding, but all the way down at Hod where the hermaphrodite shows up.
Into solidification in that jewel.
Yes, yeah.
The Tibetan Buddhists specifically, and I think Buddhists more broadly, and even Eastern and Western alchemists have an expression that's so widely used, has so many variations, but in the three is the one. From the three is the four. And from the one comes the three. All these things. But most often in the three is the four, because there's the encapsulation of.
That's why I was even saying like focused energy is because if I remember correctly, that is the path going from Tiferet, which is the sun. Now the sun zodiac is Leo. That's a like when you start getting into like Aries is an expansive explosion. Leo's a lot more of a concentrated, focused, and then at the end it's like a dying off with the different types of like energies with the zodiacs. So like that's even telling me right there that Tiferet is a focused energy because it's Leo, and then that goes up to that line going to Chesed is the Hermit card, who's now holding a lamp with, instead of a flame, a focused energy inside of it. So like I even think it shows you like the movement of focused energy just going up the tree, going up your body, So I know like I went off a lot to explain that, but like I still do think that's exactly what the fourth sphere is showing you, is energy like in form in this world.
Another of the same energetic quality that the Tibetan Buddhists put forth. There is the idea among India and Tibetan Buddhism broadly, and Buddhism, I suppose. There's the idea of siddhis, siddhis, and siddhis are intuitive powers that result from dedicated practice of meditation. And we would call them high magic. But siddhis are not meant to be pursued. As soon as you take on a practice to pursue siddhis, your meditation is not worth anything. You're not going to get such results because you're not. It's like thinking of the time when you meditate. That's not. You shouldn't be thinking of doing it for a certain time period. You should be thinking about meditating, aligning with an idea, or just trying not to think about anything, but not the time period you're meditating, and certainly not. Why am I meditating? Oh yeah, I'm trying to get siddhis so that I can be more psychic. No, you're gonna fail. You should pursue these things for the just really, maybe even a good way to look at it is, I don't want to have a negative pattern, so I'm just doing this, which is positive, so that I don't do the negative. And a lot of aphorisms, or we might relate them to commandments. They say, don't do this, right? I don't do this, and rather than I do. And if we have that approach, right, we often are more successful. Like in martial arts, I don't lose. I don't necessarily win. I don't lose. Right? Yeah, I'm going to run. I'm going to do something. Okay, I took him down. Okay, I'm not going to lose. That's a different attitude than everything's on the table and I'm going to fight till I win. right? No, it's more be Jackie Chan and don't lose whatever you got to do, right? So it's a slight shift. It almost seems nonsensical if you don't layer it, but it changes a whole dimension, you know.
Gotcha. Well, I think you have anything else you want to add? I think we could just leave it there. I think that's all very well said.
I'm good with that. That's solid hour. I appreciate you giving me the soapbox to communicate with people.
Oh, sure. I wish the connection worked out better. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, it didn't go live or what?
No, it's still live. No, I'm just saying. I wish, auditorily, when people are listening to this, they'll have no idea what we're talking about. So it was fine for them, and that's where I get most of my listens anyway. But for the people watching, thank you very much for sticking with it, even though it's been glitching and everybody's been off. I appreciate you all still hanging out and listening, at least. But yeah, I mean, this went fine, but. Thank you very much, man. That was a really good talk.
You guys so much. Thank you.
I thoroughly really enjoy that. I like talking and just like, you know, who knows? I could be totally off with all the things I'm thinking about with the tarot cards and shit. Maybe my brain's just broken.
I think,
you know, so it's all like theorizing. I like this type of stuff, but it just seems when it all keeps coming back to the 4, though, that's very weird.
Well, another quality of 4, rather than quantity, is that it is about individuation. The 4th aspect is unsaid. It is silence. It is your hermetically sealed practice. It means that's yours really. Like, it has nothing to do with me. And so it becomes a matter of what is individuation. It is your hermetically sealed practice. It may be not hermetically sealed with everyone, and that's not necessarily the point of keeping it hermetically sealed secret. It's to do what we just spoke about. Oh, hey, Ethan, what have you been up to? Oh, I just meditated for 2 hours today, bro. No one needs to know that. No one needs to know that at all. Some people don't know that I practice Tai Chi. And same thing with bringing it into that quiet internal space. It actually has that type of value, right? So this hermetically sealed idea that we get from the Hermetics of Thoth, that's, I think, part of the secrecy is not necessarily, I can't tell you because I don't think you're, it's more have it internal, have it completely internal, because that's what it's about. The initiation is the internal individuation that the 4th part represents. So I'm glad we got to touch base on that. So definitely. Thank you guys so much.
And the virtue, like when you go from the 4th sphere to the 3rd sphere, the virtue of that is silence. So
beautiful.
There's something with that as well.
The correspondence is unlimited, as is the nature of the silence. It is unlimited itself.
Very well said, sir. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff. I do have his Twitter and his, is that a Weebly account I did put in there of yours?
Yeah, I got a few different Weebly websites related to my books. Geometry of Energy, Matrix of 4, another kind of window on the 108 idea. And I'm on all the social media and so on and so forth. And I always appreciate feedback or questions or whatever, so everyone can feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And I know you have been on other shows besides mine. You don't have your own show. Would you want to just plug some of those shows so people can go and check that out as well?
There's been a few recently. As I've been finishing the 4th initiation, I've been bothering all the astute minds of the present right now. So I'm only on the good channels. Like this one.
He hit me up yesterday. I was like, "Does today work?" He's like, "Yeah, actually it does."
and I apologize for my misalignment on the temporal.
It's all right. Yo, I screw that up all the time.
It happens to me more than I like to think.
Well, at least once I go over to Europe, I'm like, I just get retarded, even though it's like really no different. It's really only an hour or two difference of dealing normally than I would with the West Coast. Like, so how am I screwing this up?
No, it's
that's
really
some crazy math.
how disorienting it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. So your links are on the bottom. Thank you very much for coming on
No,
again,
thank you.
sir.
Thank you,
And
you guys.
Teresa, co-host, would you like to plug the Spiritual Gangsters again?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Ethan. I always think whatever you have to say is so interesting.
No,
I remember the first time. I don't know if it's the first time you were on this show, but when I heard you the first time talking about the fourth element, the fourth initiation, it really changed my perspective on like the purpose of evil and a lot of just how the world works. So I thank you for your work.
beautiful. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
of
It has helped me refine my observational skills quite surprisingly.
And yeah, once you start to like have the knowledge, it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm always like, oh my god, it's 4, not 3. So it's
And
cool.
finding contrasts to or complements sometimes to solutions to situations, I find it can be even
Yes,
helpful.
totally.
Thanks,
But
man.
yeah, of course. Yeah, if people want to hear more from me, they can check out the Spiritual Gangsters. Again, on all the major platforms and YouTube and Rumble as well. So yeah, come check it out, and they can connect with me on Instagram or Twitter, but mostly Instagram. I'm not good at Twitter. I'm just not good at it. It's there though.
It's not good.
Yeah, not a good tweeter, shall we say?
Yes, and the links for your stuff is in the bottom as well. And again, like I said, thank you everybody for hanging out in the lives. I don't know if maybe also the issue could be that I'm streaming out to 5 places at once. Maybe next time I'll knock off Odyssey and see if there's a difference. Or it could just be Firefox, for all I know. Who knows? But again, thank you all for checking out the show and dealing with it. And yes, check out the Element server. And also, if you didn't already, hit that like and share this. So that's my little spiel before we end the show. And the links for all of our stuff are in the bottom as well. And again, thank you very much, Ethan, for coming on. I had a very interesting and stimulating chat. And Theresa, thank you for jumping on and joining me. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.
Peace.